6:31. And I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend the rules to consider new business items 1 and 2 at the beginning of the meeting for Attorney Rona and for Jason Gill. Is there a motion to suspend the rules for that purpose?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Paul. Was that Paul?
I think it was Tim, and I think it was Judy second.
Okay, we'll go with Tim and Judy if that's
Yes, that was Tim and Judy.
All in favor of suspending the rules
Yes, I
to
would
consider
second.
new business items 1 and 2 at this time, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It is unanimous. It's 4-0 because Lisa's not on yet, right?
No, Lisa's
Lisa
on.
is here.
Oh, she is?
Yeah,
Everyone's
she's,
on.
she's muted.
Oh, she's muted.
Okay. So it's 5-0, suspend the rules. Okay, so Attorney Rona is up now to talk about the MERS opinion letter.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone firmly ensconced in your individual homes. We're all turning our homes into home offices, and some of us are turning them into courtrooms and middle schools and everything else. So Joe asked me, I don't recall exactly when, but Joe asked if I would put together a legal opinion on the MERS program and whether a housing authority could actually withdraw from that program or partially withdraw from that program. And so then I set off trying to perform some legal research. I read the statutes to MERS and how you actually go about withdrawing from MERS. It is possible to withdraw from MERS. That's the good news. The bad news is it comes at what potentially could be a very high cost. I attached to the materials, I assume you folks have them as well. I attached a decision from the MERS Commission regarding the town of Thompson. That decision was essentially the town of Thompson tried to have a partial withdrawal from MERS. They were going to leave, they weren't going to put any new employees on the program. They were all going to put them on a different retirement program. MERS essentially slapped them down and said, you cannot do that. And that was even in light of the fact that one of the attorneys representing MERS actually said that the town could do that. The attorney is now formally of MERS. What MERS essentially determined in that decision was that, yes, you can withdraw. There is a procedure for withdrawing, but you, town of Thompson, didn't follow that procedure. And by the way, we're estimating your liability to withdraw based on what our actuaries are sort of estimating at $5.3 million. And so that's the bad news. The good news is, yes, you can withdraw. The bad news is it may come at a very high cost. As I sit here, I cannot tell you how much it will cost for Manchester to withdraw from the MERS program. I don't have that information, and even if I did, that's something an actuary would probably have to sit down and determine.
No, thank you. That's actually what we suspected based on when you did forward that Thompson information. In some discussions I've had with Joe, frankly, I think the best course of action going forward is to work with Con Narrow and other housing authorities who are similarly situated to see if we can get a change in statute to amend the MERS law to either permit us for new hires going forward, or that's probably what it would come down to. It'd be as of a certain date that we'd be permitted with new hires to go forward. Because I think even the legislature, it might be a serious uphill battle if we were to try to undo our obligation to MERS completely, but that's a matter of strategy. But I do believe because we have the majority of the housing authorities in Connecticut are in a similar situation as us. So that's probably the best course of action. I mean, the state employee retirement system has been amended multiple times by negotiation, but
well, I can tell you, I as Joe knows, I also serve on the Board of Commissioners for Weathersfield, and I've talked to our executive director, and that's been what what we've told our executive director is, let's see if this is something that Conero can take up, because it's going to be too much of a fight for any one housing authority, and one housing authority shouldn't have to bear that full burden. So I completely
Right.
agree.
Yeah. And Joe, in his capacity as president of Conero, has had at least some informal conversations with the lobbyists for Conero.
That is correct.
We didn't have a bill in this year, but frankly, it would probably make more sense to do in the long session next year anyway, unless maybe by some miracle there's a special session. But that would be very remarkable to have what essentially is an entirely new concept for the legislature to be done in special session. I think, frankly, we're a year away from doing it legislatively.
Mr. Chair, I don't know, we have Jason also, our auditor, on the Zoom call, so he could probably answer some questions too in regards to the financials that could be a burden on the housing authority also. So Jason, if you would like to add anything to that.
Well, yeah, actually, I was going to try to butt in anyways. First, before I forget, I'm looking, I see Tim and Joe on the left-hand side of my screen with absolutely beautiful backgrounds. It makes me a little bitter and jealous that what's going on over there. And meanwhile, I'm stuck in my house and, sitting here with, you guys looking at your mugs. But anyways, there are two things that come to mind. First is the obvious point that kind of Josh had kind of spoken to, and really a little bit further, is this plan has really never been amended. It's, the state one's been on tier X, and they're changing benefits to make things go, some of the fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the MERS benefits are outstanding. I mean, for disability, for spousal benefits, and all that kind of stuff. And with those great benefits comes a cost, right? And likely, perhaps an underutilized benefit that perhaps could be stripped out, for the benefit of all, to start reducing this or make it sustainable or more palpable for organizations. Because what I think the risk is that, and maybe Manchester's not the best suited, but maybe because you're starting to go through a tax credit deal, is that you have these entities kind of going and putting their businesses in private, or their assets in private entities. And therefore, what's the next step? Well, I would recommend to Joe and perhaps the board that instead of Manchester managing this tax credit entity, the nonprofit does. Well, how does it manage it? It needs employees. Okay, well then we have to hire an employee under the nonprofit that doesn't have to have this benefit. And now you're starting to kind of shift the payroll, basically the chunk of the costs, which is really what these benefits are the payments are based off of, onto a nonprofit that this MERS can't touch. And this has actually happened, not deliberately, but there are some small towns, one of them's in my client down in Fairfield County, that no longer, they have retirees that have been on pension, but now they're effectively out of the pension plan because they no longer have employees. And they no longer have employees because all of their assets are in private or in tax credit deals. And therefore they manage it. Well, in this case, they subcontract it, and a private management company does it. But if you had your management company as the nonprofit, I don't see how MERS can get you, so to speak. But obviously that becomes more of a legal issue. But, I think push comes to shove, if the state's not going to work with housing authorities in total, then I see that as a very big risk. And those that don't get out are stuck with the burden, right? So if we take this I probably shouldn't say, but Ridgefield's example, they have people collecting. Well, who's paying for them? You are, right? Manchester is. Everybody else in the plan is paying for those that have exited, and people that are, and that's really the risk, right? That's why they don't want people to leave, and why you have such a big bill when you do try to leave. And it makes sense, right? And that's why it's going to be a hard uphill battle to try to change this, to not let new people in, because the new people are what's paying for the people that are retired. So I think benefits are probably the best choice, but maybe some other thing of, as Joe looks like he's close to retiring or something, that he comes on as more of a consultant rather than an employee, and you save a lot of costs there. But again, now we start getting to a legal thing, whether that you can have your CEO effectively not an employee of the organization. That's kind of perhaps a big jump. But I guess my point is I think there are some options, and unfortunately, some of those options are not good for MERS. So that hopefully that incentivizes them to kind of come to the table and say, hey, we got to look at this a little bit more.
Right. Try maybe meet in the middle somewhere.
Exactly. Right. I mean, the point is there's room to move.
Yeah.
They've never touched benefits. They've kind of, again, I keep saying that, and nobody that's in the plan really wants their benefits touched, so to speak. But, perhaps there's some of those that aren't really utilized as much as one thing.
Right.
Mr.
No,
Chairman?
you're absolutely right, Jason. Over the last 40 years, the state employee retirement system has had at least 5 changes.
Right.
Because right now they're in a tier, the new employees are in tier 4, which is a hybrid defined benefit, defined contribution system.
Right. And I think there's a long
And by,
way for that one. We're not
for
saying-
purposes of full disclosure, I'm a beneficiary of what's tier 2 in the state employee retirement system.
Ask the question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Tim.
The way I read the opinion is we could exit MERS if we were willing to provide a retirement plan of equal value to the current employees. And could you just outline what steps we'd have to take if we decided under the current rules, what we'd have to go through? I guess the contributions are returned to us if we exit.
Well, maybe. The first thing you'd have to do is you'd have to engage the MERS Commission. At least what I would tell you to do is engage.
Excuse me, but you're going to have to tell me who's talking.
Oh, this is Mike Rona. The first thing I would suggest would be done would be engage the MERS Commission and ask them to determine what the liability would be. Before you do anything, you want to know what is it actually going to cost you to get out of it. I mean, you're right, Tim. I mean, you are going to have to provide another similar retirement program, but before you can even get that far, you want to know how much is it going to cost you to actually get out of MERS. So the first thing I would do is engage the MERS Commission and ask them, and unfortunately, it's the Housing Authority that would have to foot that bill for the actuaries to do the work, but you want to know what is it actually going to cost. Then once you know what it's going to cost, if there is a liability, I assume there is, but I suppose it's possible there isn't, but I assume there is. Once you know the liability, then you can sort of go from there. If you decide to keep going forward with it, then obviously you have to pass a resolution. You have to pass a resolution that you're going to withdraw from MERS. You have to set up your employees into a new retirement program, and then you're sort of off and running at that point. But the very first step before you do any of that is to contact the MERS Commission and find out what is it actually going to cost if you decide to pull off that Band-Aid.
Well, the town of Manchester, I think, bargained with their unions decades ago to go to the 403B type of, I think other than police, fire, and some of the Board of Ed, the educators were out of, the town got out of it. I think the fire is still in MERS, but my concern is we have zero control over our labor costs. If we continue, it looks like the costs are just going to continue to skyrocket and escalate, especially if there's more workarounds with nonprofits. They're going to escalate even more. Maybe we should at least investigate what our costs are, and maybe in the long run, we cut our losses. But I don't know what it would cost to find out from an actuary what our actual costs are, but I guess it's up to the board. seemed like it might be an investigation, at least worth finding out. Josh, you're muted. Josh, hit your mute button.
Okay, here we go. I think as Attorney Rona said, we would have to ask the MERS Commission what our financial I don't know if we want to say liability would be. That'd probably be the first step, so we'd know what the number is. But I think there's some options, and maybe it's we may put several different things on the table, but it's definitely worth exploring because the status quo is, I think we all agree that that's unworkable.
What would it take to investigate this? Would we just have to draft a letter to the commission and ask them what our costs would be to withdraw and what they would, would they return what we've contributed plus the investment results, I guess is the question.
Yeah, it'd be you folks sort of directing Joe to reach out to MERS. And Joe would have to provide whatever financial information they were looking for. I imagine they'd want to know, what employees, how many employees does Manchester currently have on its payroll that are enrolled in MERS, and how many employees maybe have already retired on MERS. That's you still have this sort of ongoing liability. So there'd have to be, I'm sure it would be a back and forth between Joe and MERS before they could actually finalize those numbers.
I guess it could go on a future agenda. We could discuss it. Does that sound reasonable, Josh?
Yes, yeah. It's obvious because the issue is not going away, and frankly, I think it may make our case. I think we need to have that information before we could make some decisions which way we want to go. But I'd also recommend that on a parallel track, we continue to pursue some of the legislative efforts.
Agreed.
And that's one thing, as you mentioned earlier, Josh, is, with me being president for Con-Nero, our lobbyist is Rome Smith and Lutz. This is discussions that I've already had with them. So this is hopefully something that will come up at the next session. But who knows with this COVID-19, what the legislators are going to be paying. But this is on our radar. And like how Attorney Rona had mentioned, this will be the whole association, not just one housing authority picking up the whole expense. And to disclose, Attorney Rona is also Con-Nero's attorney, along with Chris Cody. So we have two attorneys that support, that are on staff for Con-Nero. So we would utilize both entities.
Yeah. I've been informed, I have some inside information that the legislature tentatively is going to go into special session on or about September 1st. But frankly, I think it would be a serious uphill battle to try to put something in a special session that has never had a public hearing, to my knowledge. So I think, frankly, it's probably a 2021 issue, but yeah. It makes sense to float the issue and maybe begin some education of legislators. They're all up for election this year too. And sometimes you can raise issues at this time of year for next year.
What committee would be in charge of handling a legislation like that?
It would probably be the Labor and Public Employees, but it would also go through
Revenue and Bonding?
Yeah, appropriations and maybe finance, revenue, bonding, maybe. Although because it doesn't really have a state fiscal impact, so I don't know, but it would start in the Labor and Public Employees Committee.
Does Con-Nero have a lobbyist?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Rome Smith and Lutz.
Correct.
Yeah, a good project for them to work on.
Oh yeah, I already got them involved.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions for Attorney Rona while we have him on? Nope, seeing none. Mike, you're free to join, but well, you can be excused at this time. We really appreciate you making some time for this meeting.
Thanks for writing that opinion up.
Yeah.
No problem. The commute into this meeting was very short.
Thanks again.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Here.
Take care.
So at this time, we're going to move to new business item 2 with Jason Gill from Mileta and Company regarding our audit. So, Joe, do you want to introduce it or hand it off to Jason?
Absolutely. I'm proud once again to introduce Jason Gill, the auditor from Mileta and Company. As you know, this is an independent auditor that works for the commissioners. I reviewed the report. I'm very happy with it. I know Tim had a question. I responded back to the answer that he has. But I'm very proud of this audit report, and I'll let Jason go through it. And if there was any other questions, nobody sent me any questions, but feel free to ask Jason any questions, and hopefully he's got the answers on, or I'm sure he will get back to me with the answers so I can send it back to the board. So once again, I'd like to welcome Jason Gill to our meeting. Jason?
Thanks, Joe. Jason.
Excuse me. Because this is done audio, I really need you to say your name as you begin to talk. Some of the voices I know and others I don't. Thanks.
Jason speaking. All right. So unfortunately, the prospect of hearing an audit rundown wasn't able to convince, attorney to stick around. I feel like I could have won him over because this is so interesting. But I will say at least there's good news. We're kind of downer on the pension side for now, and it seems like this year there's really only good things to talk about, which, for an auditor, I kind of have mixed feelings because, sometimes it's a little more interesting maybe to start getting into the whys, but, I guess those are the good things. So I'm just going to kind of do a quick rundown. I'm assuming you guys have, I don't know if you want to go page by page, but I was just going to jump around and kind of go over the highlights. If you guys need me to slow down or whatever, then just holler and let me know. I'll try not to talk too long because I could talk forever.
Could you just address one question
Sure.
before you get into it? Would that be okay, Josh? In one of your emails, you had a concern about GAAP accounting of some kind of. Can you just give a quick explanation of what your concerns were on that?
Okay. Yes. So a couple years ago, the state portfolio, that would be your elderly's at Spencer Village and the congregate programs, were to convert to GAAP. All along, they've been reporting to HUD that they were GAAP accounting. I will say that this year, it wasn't as clean as I think it should be. Meaning all of my either adjustments and or reconciliations were try to correct what was reported and shown to HUD. So that was basically the HUD, and that's the FDS. That's those weird looking pages towards the back that have all the programs in different columns, and that's what's reported to HUD. Everything has to be reconciled to the financial statements. They all have to match. What was reported this year, and I think it was more congregate driven, had a lot of the non-GAAP type items in there. And what I mean by that is prior to GAAP, there was a special basis of accounting, state basis of accounting, where basically you took your grant monies and you took them as equity. They weren't income to you. It's just the state gave you money. And that's not really GAAP accounting. You couldn't see a true profit or loss. So there's just some of that. You didn't record depreciation expense because they didn't care. Well, you do that now. So part of that wasn't really reported that way to REAC, or at least not completely. So it was a little nuance that I was just recommending to Joe that he, relooks at, and I see Bob's here now, so I can tell him directly. To just, he has all the information, and just to get it into the HUD report. Because really the risk is we don't like to show HUD that what you're sending them isn't close to what the auditor is sending. it makes it look like we're changing a lot of things. When really we're not, it was just a presentation thing. That makes sense?
Yeah, so it was just on those state programs that
Correct.
you had a concern, and
Correct.
those will be corrected going forward, I assume, right?
I hope so.
Okay, all right. Thanks. I didn't mean to interrupt your presentation.
No, that's
so.
fine. And I think we'll probably, well, speak to that as we go. So in general, in the report is I always like to really quickly start all the way in the back so we can kind of get a snapshot of, the final results of the audit. So I'm just going to zoom all the way to the last page, and it shows the auditor results so we can kind of go through what we're responsible for and what the results were. That top one there, we're all in the back. We issue an opinion on the financial statements. It's going to be a qualified opinion. It's been qualified ever since MERS released this pension thing and the requirements by GASB to report things in a timely manner. They can never get up to speed. So we've been reporting this, and even our predecessors have reporting the same thing. But basically just saying that there's a scope or a gap departure, that we don't have all the pension information in time in order to file the audit. Nothing really of concern to you, but if, you should be aware that it says it's qualified and why, just that we didn't have all the pension information. Otherwise, if we go down this report, they're all no's, which is great. The last year, at least the last 2 years, have shown at least one finding. That finding has been cleared this year. We looked a lot into that, actually, and they did a good job. There's other things that you'll see in the financial side that shows that they did. Not only did we not find anything, we tried our best, but they had a really good year as far as maximizing the way the program could run. So all good things, really. So I'm going to zoom in. I kind of went over that quickly, but I'm going to zoom all the way to the financials, just so we can start doing a quick rundown to show kind of where you're at. If you're following along, it is page 7. I lost 7 here, double-sided printing, saving trees. So for me, page 7, this is going to be your income statement. If you're following along, great. Otherwise, I'll just kind of go through the good points. Basically, you have, I'm going to go to the center there. You have a slight loss, we'll say, before capital contributions of $292,375. I went down below the operating income and loss. That is a sizable increase from last year, to the better, to the good. I'll say for a variety of reasons, the most being you have very good and consistent expenses. Expenses have been really consistent over the last 2 years, really. And even now you've been maximizing your grant revenue this year. So you had kind of the best of both worlds, 3 worlds, because you had decent pension results. To talk about pension, we had the whole doom and gloom talk last year, how pension was doing really poorly. Well, there's been some recovery, or maybe some backtracking from the pension plan this year, and it looks a little better, a little less dire than it had last year. And I think that's really because they got the approval on increasing the pension rates, right? So that kind of has an effect. It may not be what you'd hope to hear, because your pension rates are still going up over the next 4 years. But it makes your numbers look better in the short term, I guess. So I'm not going to go number for number here, but the main things being the revenue HUD operating grants have been increased. They increased a sizable amount, especially in the voucher program. The reason being there, occupancy, lease up. Lease up increased, I think it was over like 5%. It's a very good number. Very good operating results on the voucher side. And as far as this year, there's really no losers. Typically, we try to see if there's really a stellar program that's covering up the results of the bad ones, so to speak. The worst performing program was Congregate, and that's because it has about $30,000 to $40,000 loss in vacancies due to the rehab. So even with those $30,000 worth of vacancies, you only had about a $10,000 loss at Congregate. which is actually pretty extraordinary because that program is not designed to cash flow nicely. It just doesn't happen. I mean, we have problems at other agencies that they can't pay their bills. So the fact with that sort of vacancy loss this year, you're only at that point is pretty remarkable. And if that's your worst program, then you're doing pretty well. So those are good news type items. Just pointing out some big numbers here. Towards the bottom, capital contributions, you get 2.9 million this year. Again, most of that, 2.7 of it is the capital that was brought in for the congregate program. It's higher than normal, obviously, because you're going through this redevelopment. Affects your bottom line, makes you look better. That's why I ignored that when I was talking, but it is still good. It's still resources into the entity. So it is what it is, so to speak. So positive operating results, I would say to the tune of, I didn't tell you the number, about $300,000 into the good, which is great, where you were close to break even last year. So this is pretty tremendous. If we go back to now page 8 to show how that 300,000, and I can tell you where I got that number if you wanted, translate to cash. We're on this page in almost the very center. You'll see that cash has slight dip in it, $75,000. Not to be alarmed, but we're going to go up to the operating point part. On a cash basis, you brought in $294,000 in cash. That's almost exactly what I just told you was your profit for the year. Where'd that cash go? Well, you're investing it a little into your properties, which is great. You know, if this kind of didn't match what we said your year was, if you're burning through cash, I would kind of go into a little bit more, but otherwise it's just kind of, our workings of cash. Cash results, a slight dip, but I'll tell you why there. It's for good reasons. But otherwise generating cash, which is, ideal what you want. So I'm going to step back to page 6 now. We talked about current operating results, their effect on cash, and that are very consistent, both good things. We did mention a slight decrease in cash. When we're back to page 6, though, if I compare that first line of cash to last year, actually unrestricted cash increased from last year, almost $75,000. The difference there is you're spending down your restricted cash. This is another point towards the Housing Choice Voucher Program, is that you're utilizing your cash available to lease up the landlords. So you're spending down restricted cash. You're getting more unrestricted resources into the agency by maximizing the program, which is exactly what you want to do. So lease up has been great this year, and no points against you for the actual auditing of that work. So really, again, good things. I feel like I'm being a broken record here. So I'm trying to find the bad in it. Maybe I'll find something soon. But
that's okay. We like hearing the good.
Yeah. All right. So a couple things on this page. So again, balance sheet. This is how you stand since inception. If we go down to the bottom, I want to go the second number up. It's showing $2 million. That's kind of your spendable resources. That's an increase of last year. And really, what does that mean? In essence, well, increase is good. But
What page are we on, Jason? Sorry.
Page 6. Page 6, statement of net position.
Ian,
What's that? Okay, I want to make sure that wasn't addressed to me. Hold on, I just want to bring something up while I'm. Hopefully, you guys have caught up there. Okay. All right. So financial results since inception. We talked about the year. This is where you stand as of that date since you guys were organized. So you have $2 million basically accumulated in basic spendable resources, right? $2 million. If we compare that to what it takes you to operate, you would last 8 months without taking another dollar in, which is great. The HUD's metric is 4 to 6 months. So you're now almost 8 months. If anything, if we want to play devil's advocate, they would say, well, you're a little under leveraged and you need to start spending your money on your assets, but you're actually still doing that too. So I can't even get you there. But basically that the 2 million is about exactly where you want to be. It shows you have healthy reserves and you're not just sitting on them without reinvesting in your assets and your buildings, because the buildings are who you are, right? And that represents what's not invested in your assets and buildings, what's left over, so to speak. So $2 million, that's an increase. A couple big changes. Reduction in liabilities overall, it's just a normal operating flows. You paid some of your big construction bills from last year, nothing really to speak of there, but a very large drop in the pension liability. We will get to that as we kind of talk about the pension a little bit. You guys and the attorney stole my thunder a little bit on that part of it, but I'll talk just a bit, and then we can kind of go into if you have any other questions or anything along those lines. So I'm going to jump to page, it's going to be 21 and 22. If you're looking at the PDF, they're kind of sideways prints. I'm going to start on page 21. As you'll see, that first column, 2019, we say there isn't any information. That's because, again, your qualification, we don't have it yet. It's not ready. It's still not ready. With COVID, who knows if they'll be ready for the next round of audits. I hope it is, because it's just a pain for me. But we were able to use the 2018 results and roll them forward, where I think I'm pretty comfortable with the numbers on your financials. It's just I can't report all the geeky numbers as far as why the numbers what they are. But if we look at your trend, if you look at that second number down in each column, you have 1.7 million, being that is what the liability was for 2018, according to MERS. Just so you know, for 2019, that liability is slightly down. It's if you remember from the first page, it's 1.65 million. So pretty consistent. You'll just like we talked last year, though. 2018 is where the big spike was, right? It doubled. In fact, I told you it was more than doubling last year because that's where they were going. Well, it's revised at double. So you're up at a kind of a higher level now, but it hasn't gotten higher. Looks like it's leveled off, a slight dip. So I guess those are good things. I feel like I'm trying to paint the picture rosy, but for the most part, it is what it is. As far as the net effect on the agency, right? That's really kind of what you guys are speaking to, and that's on page 22. Well, first, before we go to 22, just one thing on 21, that last line there in the top section on the percent. That's the main reason here. So it's basically the funded portion of the pension plan. If you look trend, it seems to be going down, right? You have a slight, so it's 75.9% in 2019. It's actually the only number I know. So it has been a slight improvement from 18, but really, as you could see with the 18 and prior, that's where everything kind of hit. You've been reporting, the pension plan has been saying it's around 88, 90, 92% funded for years. And then last year, no, sorry, it's really only 75% funded. And that's kind of where this all started, right? But just to kind of get you an idea, if I compare this to other states that I audit where I'm in, Connecticut's still in the upper echelon of funded results. The highest one I have is, I think, 84% now, because again, people are getting, the actuaries are getting a little bit more aggressive with, or I guess, depending on how you look at it, a little more conservative with the rate of return they're getting. So they're starting to kind of push harder on these. But some of the ones down south that I'm in are only like 50% funded. As you know, the states, I think it's 40% funded. So your 75% is still healthy if you compare it to your peers. So it's not in my mind, it's not dire. It's not like something that you guys better hurry up and run type of thing, but it's certainly, worth the education and poking to see what your options are. So you're not married to something you have no control over. I completely support and get that, right? You have to protect your interests. And I agree wholeheartedly. But the good news is it doesn't look like it's, running out of control. And how has that affected you? So that's where page 22 comes in. And this is what you pay every year. Granted, 2019 doesn't have a full year of the increase because it only happened the last 3 months of your fiscal period. But if you look year on year, obviously last year was the highest at 100. So it's costing you $157,000 a year. If you look, there almost $1.3 million in payroll. And your payroll's been pretty consistent year on year, and really so have your contributions. So it hasn't really had a huge negative impact on your organization yet. Granted, there's the doom and gloom of the next 3 to 4 years that are going to have a bigger impact, absolutely. But we're talking an extra 2% on that is an extra, what, $25,000, $30,000 a year. So yes, not nothing by any means, but certainly not doubling or anything of those. And to the point of the replacement package is obviously you want to take care of your employees. So you're still going to offer them a comparable vehicle for retirement. And it's still going to have some sort of match, right? So you're never going to get rid of the $150,000 contribution. You just want to protect it, right? Hopefully it doesn't get to $300,000, right? Something that's unsustainable. So currently, if you look at that, only 13%, that's kind of, a little on the high side, obviously, because you're probably thinking 10% match type thing. That's where a lot of organizations have gone, but certainly not something, out of the realm. So I guess good news on that is it didn't get worse than the last time we talked. You never know, right? It's been a pretty decent year. None of this accounts for the dip that we had the last couple months, obviously. So, there's always that sort of thing. But all in all, I really have, nothing bad to say other than you lost maybe $35,000 holding your units vacant for Congregate, but that was planned. So I guess I can't even say that was a problem. But seriously, any other questions? Feel like
Are there any questions from anyone at this point? So, Jason, is there anything else you wanted to highlight?
No, I think that's it. I do have one other request though. That, if you don't mind, that package that the attorney sent you mind sharing that with me?
Oh, sure. Joe can send that.
The opinion letter?
What's that?
Yeah, I'll send it to you tomorrow when I'm in the office.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just curious. Cool.
No problem. Let me make my little note so I don't forget, Jason.
Joe, you may also want to send him that Thompson information.
Yeah, I'll send them all that includes.
We got previously. Yeah, because there was a decision of the MERS Commission that you may find beneficial for some of your other clients too, that puts it in perspective.
Yeah, I did recall that. That was years ago. That was their.
Yeah, I'll get that to you tomorrow, Jason.
Great, appreciate it.
No problem, my friend.
Otherwise, I have nothing else.
Mr. Chairman,
Tim.
I think this is probably the 7th audit I've seen, and it's the best one I've ever seen. No findings, 0 findings. I mean, that represents, I think, a lot of quality control has gone into this, and I think the staff should be commended. And you're under your leadership, Joe. I think this is the best audit I've ever seen. I don't know if you concur, but I'm impressed.
Since for the past 6 years, since I've been the executive director there, the board, everybody's been tremendous. The staff has been tremendous. I tried, my biggest thing is for them, to give them the education, want them to work smarter and not harder. When they hear, and auditors coming in and everything else, everyone gets all freaked out with the attorneys. I'm like, this is to help us. in case if we're doing something wrong. As I think all the commissioners know, as long as there's no money missing, everything's accounted for, I'm happy with that. There are going to be things, a calculation here or there that may be done incorrectly by human nature because of disruption, with a phone call, whatever it may be. But I praise them all the time. We have one of our employees on the phone that's taking the notes. I'm there to educate them. I've always said to them, if there's a training that they need, please, let me know, and I will make sure I'm able to send you to those trainings. So, it's, thanks to the board, and, the staff has done a well job, even during this COVID-19, it's been very hectic for the past 7-8 weeks. But people have, the staff has stepped up to the plate. And work is not behind. I speak with them on occasion to find out where their workload is, if there's any issues. I'm on phone calls once a week with HUD in the Department of Housing, and you can hear a lot of housing authorities that are having difficulties in doing rent changes and everything else. I'm grateful that I've got a lot of knowledge through my, leadership and talking to other executive directors and conferences, that I can bring back the knowledge to the staff. And, and as I bring the staff to the convention so they can network and learn more and more. So it's, it's the staff, and, I cannot, I appreciate the staff really stepping up to the plate and, during tough, good times and bad times. And especially now, it's tough that, nobody's around, but, we're still doing what we need to do. And, with the Section 8 department, as Jason has mentioned, it's tough. But, at least our inspection group will be doing the initials inspections. I just got word, well, not officially, I haven't seen officially, but it seems like now HUD is agreeing to do virtual inspections, so that could, start up. But we're just hoping that with the guidance and with the last month when I asked the permission, when the PIH number 2020-5 came out in regards to all the regulations that we can, put things on hold per se. So, for when Jason, for next year's audit, or, this coming September, year's end, that housing authorities will not get very dinged on a lot of findings, because we were looking for some regulatory relief and, trying to get people leased up and everything else. But, I'm very proud to say we've had no lack in regards to the lease ups with Section 8. So, we should be doing well again. So, I thank Jason for, for the past few years since he's been our auditor, and, getting points from him, and it's also helped Boomer out. And, with Boomer and Cheryl, they make sure everything is accounted for.
Yeah, real quick, Jason speaking again. Just it's clear that the staff enjoys their job, because the stuff, it doesn't happen by accident, right? It involves work, so it's pretty easy to fail. It's kind of hard to succeed, right? It's kind of how the world works. But one of those, you brought up COVID, and just a quick reminder, and I know we didn't get a moment to speak, but Congregate should have given you some funding, right?
$15,000.
Yep. Tracking that cost going forwards. Same thing with HUD, the HCV program, that those funds that come out, you got to track them separately so you can report them. So kind of the new challenges for this year. So as you're going through this, to track those and report them so you earn them, so you get credit for them.
Right.
That's the challenge. Well, not that you don't have other challenges, but another financial challenge of this year, to just make sure you're getting credit for the money you get and you don't have to give it back.
Right. I think Boomer wanted to say something.
Yeah, Boomer, you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can, Jason, just so you know, we've already put into the accounting system all in numbers, the new numbers. We put new numbers for all the COVID accounts in both the federal and LIPH and Housing Choice Voucher Program. We're looking at making sure that we put all those things in there, and we're even discussing some of the things that we might be able to do moving forward, which we haven't spent because we certainly have the whole year to do it too. So, but, so hopefully we're all set with that.
Yeah,
Great.
I mention it now because it's,
Yep.
an opportunity to, so. Rather than criticize before. I always have to criticize after it happens.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do want to recognize your work, Boomer, and as well as Cheryl. Our financial operation is in good hands right now, and this doesn't happen by accident. So thanks, Joe, Boomer, Cheryl, and all the staff who make this happen.
No, absolutely.
As Tim said, this is as good of an audit as I've seen from the Housing Authority, and even my service on the town council, we didn't have anything that good either. There was always something to find fault with.
Hopefully this COVID goes by us and I could have more than 10 people and do a little celebration, a little luncheon or something. But, I want to be careful and making sure we respect each other in regards to this COVID. So until we get better clearance, I will be doing something for the staff. Absolutely.
Very good. Well, are there any other questions of Jason while we have him? Seeing none, Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hopefully this worked for you. There may be something about the Zoom meetings that going forward, particularly for some of our out of town guests, we may be able to utilize this even when we do get back to meeting with each other in person. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole new way, huh?
Yeah.
And Joe can always find a different background for every meeting.
You make me jealous. All right, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much, Jason. So we're going to go back to our agenda at this point and go back to item 2, the adoption of minutes for the meeting of April 15th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Tim,
Second.
seconded by Paul. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye.
We read Lisa's lips. She said aye.
Yeah, is there any, I should say, anyone opposed? No, see none, it's unanimous, 5-0. Okay, item 3, correspondence. Was there any correspondence, Joe?
No correspondence.
Okay, item 4, accounts payable for April 2020, which was distributed to board members.
It's been business as usual in regards to the payments. As everyone knows, myself and Josh signed the checks, but Boomer reviews all the payments along with Cheryl. So, we have all the accounting background checks of how things are being done, and, it's business as usual.
Mr. Chairman?
Tim.
I just had a concern, and I shared it with Joe. Looking at the water and sewer bills, and I don't know what that comes out to per person, but I know at my home here, the two of us, the bill runs $75 to $100 a quarter. Have they analyzed about what the costs are per tenant, or any idea? Or is it just kind of that's the amount we paid right along?
As far as I know, that's usually an amount that we pay all along. As I think when I answered you back a few days back or a week ago, I forgot which AMP it is. AMP 2, we get the sewer bill once a year.
Right, yeah, that's at the 8th.
And AMP 1, we get those on a quarterly basis, so that's why the cost is not so high. So that I have no understanding why the town, or how that was set up. Why AMP 1 we get the quarterly bill, but AMP 2 we get it on a yearly basis.
Oh, that's because the 8th district
Right.
oversees the sewers.
Correct.
That explains that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we did analyze all our water and sewer bills when we did the whole Siemens project.
Hmm.
And, part of that was hopefully we're going to generate some savings through efficiency with low flow toilets and things like that. I don't know if we've looked at those numbers or if Siemens has.
Well, yeah, and then what happened, unfortunately, I think the cost was there, but then because of some of the low flow problems, issues that we have, Siemens taking a look at it. The power's not there, or unfortunately, we've had ADB be coming out because we've done numerous sewer backups, and it's been costing us tons of money, unfortunately, because individuals are putting cat litter and things that shouldn't be going down the toilet. And one of the agreements that we've now made with ADB is that we're trying to identify when they get called out, if we can identify which department it's coming from. But you usually got two hookups, and so if it's cat litter and we know it's only one unit, we're trying to go after the individual. But with Mary Ann on her monthly, quarterly newsletters, we try to keep up with them and letting them know, please don't flush the flushable wipes. They say flushable, but sometimes they're not flushables, and it causes a lot of gaps. I have to assume the same thing, that a lot of the piping underground is very old, with roots and everything else, that there's a lot of breakdown. A lot of the power is not going out. But I'm trying my hardest, to educate the individuals not to do this. We did have we suspected one problem with one family, and then eventually we had moved this individual because he was claiming it was always a neighbor, and then when we moved them, not even a month, we found out it's him causing a problem. So we did have legal actions against the individuals. So it's a roll of dice, and it's the educational piece. So we are still trying to educate the people what to throw down, what not to throw down the toilet system. But I'm hoping with the RAD, with the RAD and all that stuff, that we may be able to look down the road if the piping is very old, they may need to be replaced.
Okay. Any other questions on the accounts payable? Anything else? If not, we'll move on to item 5, the executive report and the financial statements. And we have Mr. Coonihan live in person today. So do you want to handle it, Joe, or handle over to Boomer?
Well, I'll start, and I just unmuted Boomer. So as you see, based on the information that I sent to the board on behalf of Boomer, April 2020 looks great, looks good. AMP1, we had a gain of about $134,000. AMP2, we had currently a income of almost $35,000. But we had a major expenses, and like I've mentioned to you in the past, these expenses were because of the issues that we had with the heating systems, in which now the heating systems have been all corrected. It was picked up by Siemens on behalf of B&G Mechanical. I came out and everything else. But before that, I'm still working with Siemens and trying to get some expenses back of payments that we should have not been paid because this was their fault. per se. So I'm still working with that along with Attorney Rona. Everything looks great. I don't know if anyone's got questions. The CERT program, profit of, we're showing a profit of $42,000. And I don't know what else I could say, based on that and hearing the report from Jason Gill, the housing authority is being well run. We're putting money back into our properties. But, same thing with our maintenance foreman. He's not going out and buying a $5,000 countertop. We're doing a Home Depot and everything else. So, a penny saved is a penny earned. So kudos to our maintenance foreman and our maintenance guys doing a good job in turnaround units and everything else. I don't know if Boomer has anything else that he wants to add, or if anyone's got questions for Boomer or myself.
I always like to add that we don't, until the year end, do full accrual basis. So when we're doing this report or we're doing our monthly reports, there are bills still coming in, for instance, the beginning of May, which are April's bills. There might be utilities, there might be maintenance expenses like that. So it always looks good as we move along, and I don't, the amount of money we have in profit now will not totally disappear at the end of the year, but some of it could be cut into when we do final year-end accruals. For instance, we always have to go ahead and wait until the end of October to make sure we have all the information on all the utility expenses, because those bills come in at a later date. That's something you don't see now. So for many of our utilities now, while we were in the 8th month of our year, maybe 7 months of it, the utilities are in there because we don't do the accruals. So I just wanted to, we always look at our profits and say how good it is, but at the year end, they do come down a little bit because of that. But as Jason said, we have used our monies very well to put it back into things like the extra expenses we've had, like Joe mentioned, with the different problems with the sewer system and things like that. We're using money that we have in reserves towards capital expenses to improve the property.
Ask a
Any
question.
questions?
Mr. Chairman, has the HUD offered to give any additional income to offset some of the COVID costs that we might have accrued over the past 6 or 8 weeks?
Yes.
You want it, Joe, or?
Go ahead, Boomer.
HUD has actually given us, has already begun to give us money in both the public housing program and the voucher program. And the program was equivalent of about 2 months worth of admin fees, and in public housing program is equivalent to, I think, 2 months worth of extra subsidy money.
Correct.
So yes, they're giving it to us, but as Jason was mentioning before, we have to account for this completely differently. We set up different account numbers, and it's also, if we don't spend it, it's going back to them. So it's not like we can just spend it on anything. We have to spend it on specific stuff, and that's why we're looking at things like office improvements and fogging machines and different things besides the regular, because we can use this for it. So yes, they have given us money, and we're going to attempt to use whatever we can of it.
Right. And just to
Is
add,
there any,
just for an example.
Yeah,
just
Tim?
a follow-up, is there, is the board gonna, are you gonna put together a plan for the board to review as to what you're gonna do with these funds?
Well, like what I've done is what we're looking, because I had to purchase, for an example, computer systems for a couple of staff people so they can work from home. That would be money that's utilized for COVID. As Boomer has mentioned, what I just did now is for our front door. I am spending roughly about $5,000 to put in an intercom system with a buzzard. So what I'm looking at, because of looking at what the governor's proposal, executive orders, for right now, the way I'm looking at it and talking with all my other colleagues here in Connecticut and throughout the country, basically they're looking at just appointments only, per se, of seeing individuals, or like what we've been doing for the past 2 months, and which has been working, is doing everything via U.S. Post Office, U.S. Mail. We have drop boxes at all 3 sites, and phone calls and everything else. So thus far, everything is working good. So I'm looking at possibly, oh, Lisa dropped out. I'm looking to possibly do more computer upgrades with that money. This could be a part that, how we have people talking about possibly going paperless per se a little bit with tenant files. So I'm looking at all these different options. I may have to, the only offices that I may have to do a little renovation is in the Section 8 department where Karen and Jackie is, because of the 6 feet and everything else. One of my things is that I've had the discussion with staff, because I just didn't want to be just my decision. I wanted to get staff's input. A lot of people, I don't want to be saying hate to use the money, but I hate to waste money if not needed, and spend it accordingly. In which, where everybody's offices, as you may know, everyone's got the cubicles, and I think if I put the plastic plexiglass in front of their desks to meet with people, I'm just bringing more of the environmental into the operation of the offices, in which I want to keep it secluded in one area. So what I'm looking to possibly do is in the community room, because I don't think there's going to be any more functions utilized in the community room, to kind of utilize the community room as a couple cubicles in there. So in case of our staff needs to see a participant, that I have tables, desks with the plexiglass, so I can minimize the exposure in case if anyone's got the COVID. So when that person leaves, we got everything we can clean right in that vicinity, and try to keep it in a central location. I would hate to have individuals have residents go through the whole office. Now, God forbid, if somebody did have COVID and did not tell us about it, then you have a whole pandemic throughout the office. So I think if I keep it in one central location, I'm trying to confine it in one place. So, if you want me to give you a plan, I just don't know what my plan would be. It's going to be come and go. You see, with this, you could probably do video cameras. So this is stuff that I could possibly utilize also to purchase video cameras and everything else. And like Boomer says, I'm going to say we probably got about $300,000 or $400,000 that I got money that I could utilize into doing this. But we have to everything's got to be documented to the penny, and it's got to be COVID-19 related, and everything else.
Has to be spent by the end of the year. So yeah.
Right.
I wasn't suggesting any micromanagement, but just maybe you can just keep the board informed month to month as to what you're doing.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Other than that,
More on the financials.
Anything else? Any other questions while we have Mr. Coonahan? Seeing none, we'll move on to vacancy reports.
yes. I sent out the vacancy reports. As you can see, there's a lot of units here that are going to be leased up. Unfortunately, the bottom 2, the ones for Pascal Lanes, and I'll get into it more later. Pascal Lanes, I'm not going to be leasing those units up because that's going to be part of the swing units once we start, hopefully by August 1, on the renovations of Spencer Village. So to keep costs down and put people in hotels, we're going to do almost the same thing we did up at the Congress have swing units. So I've already had the discussions with CHFA and DOH. They're fine with that. So everything else, Steve is leasing these individuals up, but it's doing everything by the phone in mail. No person to person. Individuals have gone. They've seen the units. So that they will be getting off. It's just taking a little extra time because of the postal services and everything else. Right now we just basically have the 2 empty units, one at Bluefield Drive and the other one on Case Drive, and so forth. So, kudos, and it's just the way now. And, Tim, I'm going to take you up on when we get these empty units. I'm going to get in touch with you to take some pictures, maybe videos, and that will be something that we're going to do down the road and, do a virtual reality on a web base per se. And this is stuff that we're looking at to do for individuals to, instead of, if they don't want to come out to the properties, at least we'll have pictures that you've taken and be on our website, and we'll take it from there. But if they want to come and see it, the protocol that we do have now is maintenance will open up the door. You wait outside, let the family individual go in, do a tour, and once they leave, maintenance locks it up. And any questions that they have, they contact, either, Steve Itsu or Martha Bertrand, whoever the case, property manager, whichever units they're going into, and they'll go through any questions that they may have. But HUD knows it's going to take a little extra time, so I believe, this is going to be part of a regulatory relief that they're going to have. To let go of the 14 days and everything else, because knowing that difficulty of people that could be COVID-19, a lot of executive directors are hesitant on leasing up units because you just don't know that these individuals that are coming or leasing the property, if they are COVID positive or not. We don't know and everything else. So a lot of people are just being reluctant and going very slow in regards to the leasing procedures. Every Friday, there's probably well over 1,000 executive directors that are on a conference call with the Assistant Secretary Hunter Kurtz in regards to a lot of these issues. So, HUD, I gotta say, HUD has really stepped up to the plate, has listened to a lot of us, and they've come through. I got to give them kudos during this crisis. You won't hear that a lot of times, but you're going to hear, kudos. And it was nice that they're stepping up to the plate in regards to that.
Okay, anything else on vacancy reports? If not, we're going to move on to item C, C1, the modernization report.
Yes, nothing, it's the same report as last month. I've spoken with our new person, Niles, who he's an employee of John D'Amelia. I'm meeting with him tomorrow because we're trying to start at least some of the roof projects. I believe I may mention we have 4 roof projects left to do on our properties. So he is going to be coming down and taking a look and verifying what may need, and take a look at, the proposals, like what our former mod coordinator used to put for specs and everything else. So he's going to be taking a look at that. I think it's going to be working very well. Same thing down in Mayfair Gardens. There's 5 buildings that we need to do left in regards to the utility upgrades outside. So basically, what I'm looking to do with the modernization is probably anything that deals with the outside, so you don't have to do anything on the inside with these individuals, because you do have a lot of contractors that are fearful of going into people's apartments thus far. So hopefully, within the next month or 2, you'll start seeing a report for more jobs being processed.
Okay. Questions?
And just by the add, because of the thing, because of the money that we got from the capital fund, because of COVID-19, the deadline got extended for an extra year. So we got an extra year to spend that money and everything else. So, but I'd rather spend it as fast as I can so we can close out our books and everything else. But we'll do what we can for the time being.
Okay. Any questions on the modernization report? Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 2, the memo for the update to the RAD.
Yeah, we're in the same dilemma. I've been in contact daily for the past couple days. I've been speaking with Nathan. We do have a phone call with Lisa Schumerhorn with Siemens because one of the objectives that we're trying to take a look at, as you may recall, some of the sessions that you've attended at the conferences, we're looking to where the housing authority is going to benefit the money the most during this RAD conversion per se. So one of the issues that we may have is because we have to maybe split Mayfair Gardens per se into 2 different RAD transactions. We just want to verify from Siemens, would that cause an interruptions in regards to the cost savings measures that they gave to us that when we signed the deal with them a few years back. So we're just waiting for that. And of course, HUD is still leery of what's going on in regards to the MERS retirement fund. You just heard from both Jason and from Mike. We have to try to figure out what is going to be there to try to, put money in a separate account because HUD does not want to see this money on the books as a liability. So we are just waiting to see where we're going. And, unfortunately, a little bit of the COVID is holding us all up in this matter. So we're hoping that we hear something within the next couple of months. Stay tuned.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, move on to item 3, the update to revitalization of the congregate.
Yes. And when I wrote this report, we were still in negotiations with Northeast Builders. We're still trying to hear from them what's going on because some of the contractors were from Massachusetts, and because of this pandemic and everything else, at this point in time, myself, along with Tom Arcari, who's our architect, we have a conference call with the owner of Northeast Builders, CHFA, myself, and Tom Arcari next week to figure out what their plans are. If I have to guess, I think something's going on with the company. I may, I don't want to start rumors or what it may be, but I think, the company may have went belly up and that their subcontractors have walked. I'm not 100% sure, but that's my opinion from talking to other individuals. And if that's the case, then we would need to go after their bond and everything else. And Mike Rona is involved, will be involved in regards to this. So we're hoping to try to settle this. There are a bill that they've kind of sent to me. I believe it's very fictitious. I don't believe the numbers are totally correct. I've asked them to give me justifications, paper trails, and all that stuff. To this day, I still have not gotten it. As I said to Tom Arcari, I'm not budging until we get that information. And he says, you know what, Joe, you are absolutely right. I'm not going to be just giving a company X amount of dollars because they say so. I want the proof, just like any auditors would say. Stay tuned. If I need to go through the bond or, if there's something serious that will be going on, I will get in touch with Mr. Chairman. If we need to have a special meeting to let the board know, I will be doing that. So I won't know more until next Wednesday when I have this call.
Okay. Yeah, keep us informed, because if you do need any action
Oh,
from
yeah.
the board, we can do a Zoom meeting pretty quick. We're getting a little better at it.
I'm trying, yeah, I'm getting a little bit good at it, but yeah, stay tuned.
Okay, next item is the update to the revitalization of Spencer Village.
All right, so I got some good news and some bad news.
I saw someone driving up here.
Good news is that we're hoping, you know, I've been CHFA, Department of Housing, everything's been great with them. Unfortunately, after I wrote this memo to you, some stuff came down the pipes, unfortunately. Apparently, the building in front of Spencer Village, 171 Spencer Street, apparently there used to have been a dry cleaner system, a dry cleaning entity. The first one was called United Cleaners. Then they sold, then it became Central Cleaners. And then right now there's a sign that says Yes Cleaners, but Yes Cleaners is not a laundromat. It's a thrift store. Apparently, the owner of that building probably had the building up for sale last year. And apparently, Connecticut DEP went out there, and I guess part of their sale of the property, they had to do some testing. And apparently there was some chemicals discharged. But I believe that the owner party did not sell the property, did not want to go further. So now on the Connecticut DEP, that the syndicators, our tax credit syndicators, have questioned it. So now, as of today, I just got a quote, and it's going to cost the housing authority, but it's part of the money that's in our plan there, $10,000 that I have to put a monitoring well in place, in which with that we need to monitor the water and vapors, because they are fearful that the radon may be up in the air and could go into people's apartments. So you can see my head is spinning on this. And if the water well comes back and has, you know, some significant thing, then we have to go through the next step, and which will cost us about $70,000, an extra $60,000. And if anything of that happens, then we may have to have the soil sample, get it tested. And if it had to do soil remedifications, if I have to guess, you may be talking a few $100,000. So keep alert. I will keep Mr. Chairman abreast of what's going on. Same thing, if I may have to have a special meeting in regards to this, I will need to let you know. So Tuesday, I do have I do have my weekly calls with CHFA and DOH. I will have to disclose this findings that we just found out and let them know. And I'm just hoping that they're okay with where they stand, and hopefully that this monitoring well is the only thing that we need to do for Spencer Village. Otherwise, if we got to go further, there's going to be a definite delay in regards to the revitalization of Spencer Village. I don't know if I don't know if I've lost any more here, or if I got more gray. It's just been mind-boggling these past few days, and everything else. So stay tuned. I'm hoping, if I have to guess, I'm hoping that the monitoring wells will come up negative and everybody will be happy.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
Joe did share this information with me earlier today. And I said, let's bring it up, and so everyone's aware of it. I do think, we need to be prepared if the monitoring well does identify something. But clearly, we need to see if we can keep the project moving, but we may need to engage our legislators, because this would no longer just be a housing project. This would be an environmental remediation, and perhaps we'd be looking at some sort of grant proposal from DEEP, because probably the closest units we have at Spencer Village are about 100 feet or so from the back of that building.
Yeah.
Because the dry cleaner's on the end of that shopping center,
Correct.
right by the driveway into Spencer Village. So I did go out there, and that the Yes Cleaners appears not to be a Cleaners anymore. It's kind of, it looked like a sketchy operation, and
It's
as
a
Joe
sketchy-
said, there were
It's
two
a sketchy thrift
previous
store.
dry cleaners there as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Tim.
if my memory serves me correctly, was that the building where there was a fish restaurant and a dry cleaners? And they used to come to the board of directors and complain that the fish smell made the dry cleaning smell like fish? Wonder if that's the same operation.
I think you are correct.
Now, just not to go off on a tangent, but the liability should rest with the chain of title of the owner of that building. I mean, wouldn't there be some recourse if we did have to do a cleanup to at least?
Well, they're just worried about, they're worried about if the discharge is on our property. So because it's on our property, way I've been hearing with the Fuss O'Neill, I've been dealing with both Fuss O'Neill and American Environment. So anything that's on our property, that would be our responsibility.
No, I understand that, but if the origin of the contamination was the cleaners, you would think there would be some recourse through litigation or something to be made whole if we had to basically clean up a mess caused by the owner of that building.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
I don't have that answer.
What do you think? What do you think, Paul?
Well, what I'll say, Tim, is there's a lot of factors that go into that. I mean, it goes, whether or not the environmental mess was caused by the current owners, the previous owners, how much of their work is damaged, has done the damage to us, how much is it going to cost for litigation? I mean, there's just so many factors. It's really hard for me to guess at it. I mean, if you do damage to a neighbor's property, are you responsible? In theory.
Yeah. But the bottom line is the first step is to engage the consultants to do the monitoring well,
Yes.
because that at the bare minimum is what we need, that information to satisfy the syndicators, right?
Yes.
So
Project's not going to be easy.
No, so that's why.
nothing's come easy in Spencer Village.
Oh my God. And I love the property. I love the people there, but it's just been, myself along with our consultants, when we put the whole plan together, I'm not going to be disrespectful for the prior CHFA top leaders, but they're the ones that forced it down my throat that we needed to do a tax credit and all that
Right.
stuff. Otherwise, if we didn't have that tax credit in there, this proposal would not go through.
We just did straight bonding from the state.
Yeah.
Would be under construction right now, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I will keep Mr. Chairman posted. If we need to have a special meeting, I'll let you know.
Right. So Joe, what you're saying is we may need to use some COCC money initially, and then we'll get reimbursed.
Right. This
On
would
the
be
project.
this would be just like we did with the nonprofit when I borrowed the $30,000 for the roof. I'm gonna have to borrow $10,000 because, since I'm just letting you know that I'm going to be taking $10,000 from the COCC because Spencer Village does pay into the COCC. So I just wanted to let you know ahead of time. So when you see it, a big jump, in which Boomer will probably make a note on it, that, why there's a big loss or, not much of a gain. What I'm going to be doing is taking $10,000 from the COCC to pay for this. And then when I do the closing, hopefully at the end of June, all that money, the $30,000 will be returned back to the nonprofit. This $10,000 will be put back in the COCC. So I just need to, take some money from somewhere, but it'd be replaced.
Right. Okay. So that's the Spencer Village update. Any other questions?
Yeah, no. And just to probably just add one more thing that just happened today is I just wanted the board to know.
Okay.
I did let Josh know. I spoke with Don Janelle from the town. Got his name.
Emergency management.
Emergency management, and talked to him. Very nice guy. He is going to be getting me, I sent him a laundry list of supplies that I could use for my maintenance guys. He's like, Joe, no problem. He was tremendous. He's going to be trying to get me as much stuff that I asked for because he's able to go through Hartford with the FEMA on Tuesday. So hopefully I'm going to be getting some nice new equipment, safeguards, N95 masks, Tyvek suits, infrared thermometers, and other things. So I'm going to be sending him a very nice thank you, but I want to let the board know that speaking with him, what a nice guy and very open-hearted, and was willing to do this for us, for the housing authority. So I want to say, I'm going to send him a nice thank you card and thanking him for his services and trying to help my staff, our staff at the housing authority to stay safe and get me some masks that I'm going to pass out to residents. One-time deal, surgical masks to the individuals, because we're not in the business of supplying them, but at least to give them something for now for the protection of the COVID-19. So I'm going to be following up with him a nice little thank you card. But I just want to let the board know that was very nice and very nice conversation. And I'm sure I'll be doing more business with them down the road.
Very good. The next item is the chairman's report. We're going to pass on the chairman's report. There's no old business, so brings us to item 8, new business. We did 1 and 2. So item 3, resolution 2020-6, updated section 8 housing choice voucher utility allowance schedule.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's that time of the year, once a year under HUD's rules and regulations, under the Section 8 program, and also for our public housing side. We always have to take a look at our utility schedule and update it. So basically, I basically use the John D'Amelia utility schedule that they do for the Section 8 program. It's always been approved by both the state and from HUD. So I just want to, ask for a passive resolution to incorporate the 2020 HUD utility allowance effective June 1st of 2020. And this is basically the utility allowances that individuals, if they're whatever type of utilities that they are paying for, they get a deductions in regards to their calculations off of their gross calculations.
Yep. This is the schedule that we use every year for this purpose. So is there a motion to approve resolution 2020-6?
I'll also move. This is Paul.
Moved by Paul. Is there a second?
I'll second. I'd just like to ask a question before
Sure.
you vote on it.
Okay, moved by Paul, seconded by Tim. Tim, you have the floor.
Just my question is, how does this compare to the prior years? Is it flat? Is it up? Is it down?
It's basically up maybe roughly between $1 and $2.
Okay, so a real minor amount.
Yeah, and this is the this is the benefit the tenants on their calculations.
Yeah.
So
I guess my question was because oil and anything to do with gas and has gone down quite a bit.
yeah, it's usually
I just wonder if that had affected this at all.
no, like you said, it changed by about $1 or $2 on certain, but some of them stood the same.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. It is unanimous. Now that brings us to item 9, items for future agenda. Does anybody have something for a future agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Tim?
can we further discuss our, I guess, the information gathering we might want to do on the MERS? Continue what we discussed tonight and see what we want to do as a board, if we want to do anything, or if we want to study it further or gather more information. I don't know, I guess it would just be a discussion item.
Yeah, I think we can keep the discussion. We want to, obviously, the issue's not going to go away. I do think in the near term, as I mentioned before, Joe has had conversations with our lobbyists for Con Nero, because I do think that clearly is part of the strategy. Whether we choose to go it alone in any way, shape, or form, including some of the things that Jason, our auditor, mentioned, possibly about, utilizing the nonprofit down the road, that as it relates to the status of employees, that could be part of it, or it could be a hybrid of sorts.
I guess my question, and I guess that it would take the board to discuss it, whether we want to investigate what it would cost us, what hoops we'd have to jump through if we wanted, as a standalone agency, withdraw from it and set up our own plan. And I have no idea what the costs involved with hiring an actuary or getting a pension consultant in. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what the steps would be and what the cost would be, and then we could make a decision whether it's in our best interest or not.
Right. I do think we had enough of a discussion that we can add a discussion item next month, and maybe, spend a little bit of time kicking things around in terms of what the next steps will be. So we will do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other items for future agenda? If not, we can always add between now and next month anyway. And I do believe we're going to be doing Zoom at least one more meeting. I understand June 20th is the target date for allowing gatherings of up to 50 people, which may permit us to do meetings. I don't know if there's going to be additional guidance for public meetings. If they're going to, I think it may be a good thing, perhaps, for people who may not feel comfortable, that we could have a public meeting but still permit Zoom participation if that's allowed. So something to consider. But I believe the June meeting will clearly be a Zoom meeting. So moving on to item 10, it says executive session is expected.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake. No,
Okay.
maybe not.
I was about to kick Boomer and Karen out, but I guess we don't have to do that.
No, my mistake. My bad.
Okay, so there is no executive session expected.
Oh.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Paul. Seconded by, I see Lisa's like chomping to make the motion. Is that a motion, Lisa?
Yes, sure.
Move to adjourn by Lisa. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye.
Who made the motion and who seconded?
It was Paul and Lisa.
Okay.
So it is unanimous, and it's 8:10 adjournment.
Very good meeting.
Okay, we'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Stay safe and stay tuned. I'll keep everyone abreast of what's going on.
Yeah, and don't overthink that Spencer Village, Joe. Don't let